Welcome, dear viewers. For more exclusive, thrilling stories every week, join our membership. Sit back, relax, and sip your coffee. Enjoy. Most folks pay with cash or card, but every once in a while, someone will walk in who looks like they just crawled out of the swamp. They'll grab a cold drink, come to the counter, and place a single perfect alligator tooth on the counter. No words. You learn to just nod, take the tooth, and drop it in the little wooden box we keep under the register. The one night a new guy refused, the customer just smiled, a slow, wide smile, and the glass door on the drink cooler shattered all on its own. The customer walked out, and we never saw that new guy again. My name's Jake Thibodeau, and I've been working the graveyard shift at Pride gas station on Highway 90 just outside Houma for 8 months now. People ask me how a guy from Minnesota ended up in the heart of Terrebonne Parish, and the answer's about as messy as you'd expect. My ex-wife, Melissa, decided she needed to find herself in California with her yoga instructor. The divorce took most of my savings, and my brother Beau, who'd been down here working offshore rigs, said I could crash at his place in Chauvin until I got back on my feet. That was supposed to be temporary. But when your brother dies in a rig accident 2 weeks after you arrive, and you're suddenly inheriting a double-wide trailer with 6 months left on the lease, temporary becomes permanent real quick. The only job I could find that didn't require speaking fluent Cajun French was this overnight clerk position at Pride. Pride gas station sits at the intersection of Highway 90 and Bayou Black Drive, a stretch of road where Spanish moss hangs so thick it blocks out the moon most nights. During the day, it's your typical rural gas station. Fishermen buying ice and beer, shrimpers getting coffee and boudin on their way to the docks. But after 10 p.m., when the last of the day shift traffic dies down and the swamp really comes alive, that's when you meet the other customers. The station itself is a squat concrete block building painted that faded yellow-green color you see on half the businesses down here. 2 ancient gas pumps out front, both still taking cash. Inside, we've got the usual suspects: energy drinks, snacks, a hot food roller that hasn't worked since Hurricane Gustav, and a beer cooler that sounds like it's gargling swamp water. The register sits behind bulletproof glass, not because of crime, but because of what happened to the last guy who worked here without it. My manager, Mrs. Boudreau, is a 70-year-old Cajun woman who speaks English like she's doing you a personal favor. She trained me on my first day, and that's when she handed me the laminated sheet of rules. 7 simple protocols, she called them. "Follow these, and you go home in the morning," she said, her accent thick as chicory coffee. "Don't follow them, and..." She just shrugged and walked away. I should have paid more attention to that shrug. Should have asked more questions about the wooden box under the register, or why the cooler door sometimes opens by itself, or what exactly happened to make them install that bulletproof glass. But I needed the job, and $15 an hour to sit in an air-conditioned building beat sleeping in my truck. Mrs. Boudreau left me alone on my 3rd night. The laminated sheet of rules sat taped to the register, 7 numbered items in her careful handwriting. I'd read them probably 50 times, but they still felt like someone's idea of a practical joke. Rule 1. After 11 p.m., if someone pays with an alligator tooth, accept it. Place the tooth in the wooden box under the register. Never count the teeth. Rule 2. The beer cooler door will open by itself 3 times each night. Close it quietly. Do not look inside while it's open. Rule 3. If the payphone rings, it shouldn't. Let it ring exactly 7 times. Then answer with, "Pride Station, we're closed." Hang up immediately. Rule 4. Never serve customers who are dripping wet but aren't sweating. They'll ask for specific items. Give them whatever they want for free. Rule 5. Between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., someone will knock on the employee bathroom door. Say occupied through the door. Do not open it, even if they claim to be management. Rule 6. If a customer's reflection doesn't appear in the security monitor, complete their transaction normally. Do not mention the missing reflection. Rule 7. Keep the radio on. If it starts playing the same song 3 times in a row, turn the volume down, but never turn it off completely. The local country station, KTIB, played through the ancient radio mounted above the coffee maker. Garth Brooks was halfway through Friends in Low Places when I heard the first customer of the night. A Chevy pickup rumbled up to pump 2, headlights cutting through the dense curtain of moss hanging from the old cypress trees that bordered the parking lot. Normal enough. Guy came in wearing coveralls, stained with motor oil, grabbed a Red Bull and the bag of pork rinds. Paid with a 20, got his change, wished me a good night. Standard transaction. The beer cooler door swung open 15 minutes later. I glanced up from my Stephen King paperback, Pet Sematary, which probably wasn't the smartest choice for this job, and stared at the open cooler. Through the glass shelves stopped with Bud Light and Abita, I could see the back wall of the cooler interior. Just metal and insulation, nothing special. But Mrs. Boudreau's rule echoed in my head. Do not look inside while it's open. I walked over and pushed the door shut. The handle was ice cold despite the muggy Louisiana night. Around midnight, an old Ford sedan pulled up. The driver sat behind the wheel for several minutes before getting out. Even from inside the station, I could tell something was off about the way he moved. Too stiff, like his joints needed oil. He wore khakis and a button-down shirt that might have been white once, but had turned the color of swamp water. The man entered without triggering the door chime. That should have been my first real warning. But I was still thinking like someone from Minnesota, where weird meant maybe your neighbor collected too many lawn ornaments. He walked straight to the drink cooler, selected a Coke, and approached the counter. His shoes squelched with each step, leaving dark, wet prints on the linoleum. When he reached the register, I noticed his clothes weren't just dirty, they were soaked through. Water pooled around his feet. "That'll be $1.50, I said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a perfectly dry wallet. From it, he extracted a single alligator tooth, about 2 inches long, ivory white and sharp as a needle. He placed it on the counter between us. My mouth went dry. Not sweating, I thought. Dripping wet, but not sweating. I looked at his face for the first time. His skin had a grayish tint, and there were small tears in his cheeks that looked like they'd been made by fish hooks. But his eyes were alert, watching me carefully. "No charge," I managed to say, my voice sounding strange in my own ears. I picked up the tooth. It was warm, which seemed wrong, and opened the wooden box under the register. Inside were at least 30 other teeth, all different sizes, all gleaming white. I dropped the tooth in with the others and closed the box. The man nodded once, took his Coke, and walked out. Again, no door chime. His wet footprints remained on the floor for hours, even though the building's air conditioning should have dried them in minutes. The payphone rang at 1:17 a.m. I'd forgotten we even had a payphone until I heard it. The old rotary phone mounted on the wall near the bathroom, probably installed sometime in the Carter administration. It rang with that harsh metallic sound payphones used to make. 1 ring, 2, 3. I counted each one, my finger hovering over the receiver. 4, 5, 6. On the 7th ring, I picked up. "Pride Station, we're closed." Static filled the line, then what sounded like water lapping against something hollow. In the background, very faint, I heard what might have been singing, a woman's voice, wordless and sad. I hung up. The beer cooler door opened again at 1:45 a.m. This time, I noticed something I had missed before. While the door was open, the compressor that normally hummed constantly went silent. The entire store became quiet, except for Hank Williams Jr. on the radio singing "A Country Boy Can Survive." I closed the door. The compressor resumed its steady hum. By 2 a.m., I was starting to understand that Mrs. Boudreaux's rules weren't suggestions. They were survival instructions, written by someone who'd learned them the hard way. That's when someone knocked on the bathroom door. The knocking came again. 3 sharp raps, then silence. I stared at the bathroom door from behind the counter. The employee restroom sat at the back of the store, past the beer cooler and the rack of motor oil. Mrs. Boudreaux had shown it to me on my first day. A cramped space with a toilet, sink, and a mirror that was cracked down the middle. "Occupied," I called out, my voice carrying across the empty store. The knocking stopped. KTIB transitioned from Hank Jr. to some Zydeco music, accordion notes dancing through the static. I checked the security monitor showing the parking lot. Empty except for my beat-up Nissan pickup and the moths circling the overhead lights. The timestamp read 2:17 a.m. 5 minutes passed. Then the knocking resumed, more insistent this time. 4 quick raps followed by 2 slow ones. "Occupied," I said again, louder. Through the thin bathroom door came a muffled voice. "Jake? That you in there, boy?" My stomach dropped. The voice sounded like Bo, my dead brother. Same Cajun accent he'd picked up after 15 years down here. Same way of saying my name like it had an extra syllable. "I know you in there, Jake. Open up, brother. We need to talk." My hands started shaking. Bo had been cremated 6 months ago. I'd scattered his ashes in Bayou Terrebonne myself, watching the gray powder disappear into the dark water while a great blue heron watched from the cattails. "This ain't right," the voice continued. "What you doing working at this place? Mama always said you were too smart for manual labor. Remember when you wanted to be a teacher? Before Melissa got her claws in you?" The details were correct. Bo was the only person who knew about my education degree, the one I'd never used because Melissa convinced me to go into sales instead. How she'd slowly talked me out of every dream I'd ever had until I forgot I'd wanted anything beyond making her happy. "Come on, Jake. Just open the door. I got something to show you." I gripped the edge of the counter. Rule 5 was clear. Someone will knock on the bathroom door between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. Say, "Occupied." Don't open it, even if they claim to be management. Even if they claim to be your dead brother. "Occupied," I whispered. The knocking turned violent. The door shook in its frame like someone was throwing their whole body against it. The sound echoed through the store, drowning out the radio. I could hear the metal door handle rattling. "You always were stubborn," the voice screamed, no longer sounding like Bo. "Just like Dad." Too proud to listen to anyone. Dad. Though never talked about our father. The old man had walked out when we were kids, and mentioning him was a sure way to end any conversation with my brother. The attack on the door stopped as suddenly as it started. I stood there breathing hard, sweat beading on my forehead despite the air conditioning. The radio resumed its normal volume, Beausoleil playing Jolie Blonde. Everything seemed normal again. A car pulled into the lot. The headlights swept across the windows as a white Camaro parked at Pump 1. The driver's door opened, and a woman stepped out. Even from inside, I could see she was stunning. Long black hair, wearing a sundress despite the late hour. She walked toward the store with the easy confidence of someone who knew she turned heads wherever she went. The door chime announced her entry. She smiled at me, and I felt that familiar flutter in my chest that I hadn't experienced since before my marriage fell apart. "Evening," she said, her voice carrying a slight accent I couldn't place. Not Cajun, something else. Hot night. Yes, ma'am, I managed. She browsed the snack aisle, selecting a bag of chips and a bottle of water. When she approached the counter, I noticed her reflection in the security monitor that showed the register area. Except there wasn't one. The monitor displayed the counter, my hands on the keyboard, the products she'd set down, but no woman. Just empty space where she should be. Rule 6. If a customer's reflection doesn't appear in the security monitor, complete their transaction normally. Do not mention the missing reflection. That'll be $3.25, I said, forcing my voice to stay level. She handed me a $5 bill. Her fingers were ice cold when they brushed mine. As I made change, she leaned closer to the bulletproof glass. "You're new," she said. It wasn't a question. "Been here a few months." "What happened to the last guy?" "Tommy Prejean." I knew the name. Mrs. Boudreau had mentioned him once, the clerk who'd worked here before they installed the bulletproof glass. She'd gotten quiet when I asked why he left. "Don't know," I said. "I just work here." The woman studied me with eyes that seemed older than her face. Tommy was real friendly. Always wanted to chat, ask questions, curious about things that weren't his business. I handed her the change through the slot under the glass. She pocketed it without counting. "You seem smarter than that," she said. "Good. Curiosity killed more than just cats around here." She collected her items and walked toward the door, then paused and looked back. "Oh, and Jake? That wasn't your brother knocking on the bathroom door. Your brother's at peace. What's in there?" She shrugged. "Well, it's been hungry for a long time." The door chime rang as she left. I watched her drive away, the Camaro's taillights disappearing into the moss-draped darkness of Highway 90. How did she know my name? I hadn't worn a name tag, and Mrs. Boudreau had never mentioned putting one on the employee uniform. The beer cooler door swung open for the third time at 3:31 a.m. I walked over to close it, but this time I caught a glimpse of something through the glass shelves. For just a second, between the bottles of beer, I saw what looked like a face pressed against the back wall of the cooler. Pale skin, mouth open like it was trying to scream. I blinked and saw only the metal wall. My hands trembled as I pushed the door shut. The handle was so cold it burned my palm. The radio had been playing the same George Strait song for the past 10 minutes. Amarillo Morning started up for the third time in a row. Rule 7. If the radio plays the same song 3 times, turn the volume down but never turn it off completely. I reached for the volume knob and twisted it counterclockwise until the music became background whisper. In the sudden quiet, I could hear things I'd been ignoring. The settling of the building, the distant sound of something moving through the swamp behind the store, and from the direction of the bathroom, very faintly, scratching. Like fingernails dragging across the inside of the door. A pickup truck pulled into the lot. This one I recognized, Cody Boudreau, Mrs. Boudreau's grandson. He came in most nights around 4 a.m. on his way to the shrimp docks. Normal customer, normal transaction. But when he walked through the door, he was dripping wet. Water ran from his hair, his clothes, pooling on the floor just like the man with the alligator tooth. But Cody was sweating too. I could see perspiration on his forehead mixing with whatever liquid soaked his shirt. "Hey, Jake," he said, breathing hard like he'd been running. "Can I get a coffee? Large, black, and maybe some paper towels." He was shivering despite the heat. His eyes kept darting toward the windows, like he expected something to follow him inside. "You okay, Cody?" I asked, pouring coffee into a large cup. "Yeah, just..." He glanced at the windows again. Truck broke down about a mile back. Had to walk through the marsh. Fell in a couple times. That explained the water, but not the fear in his eyes. I'd seen that look before, in Afghanistan, on the faces of soldiers who just survived an IED blast. Shell shock. "That's $2.50 for the coffee," I said. "Paper towels are free." He paid with crumpled bills from a wet wallet, grabbed a handful of towels from the dispenser, and headed for the door. "Cody," I called after him. "You sure you're all right?" He stopped with his hand on the door handle and looked back at me. "Jake, you ever wonder why this place stays open all night? Gas station in the middle of nowhere. Probably sells more beer, too. Unusual customers than regular folks." Before I could answer, he was gone, walking fast toward wherever he'd left his truck. The scratching from the bathroom door grew louder. The scratching from the bathroom door stopped at exactly 4 a.m. I'd been watching the clock on the register, counting down the minutes until Rule 5's time window ended. The silence that followed felt heavier than the noise. Dawn was still hours away, and I was beginning to understand why this job paid $15 an hour. Hazard pay, not wages. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Checked the wooden box. I stared at the message. Nobody had my work phone number except Mrs. Boudreau, and she was old school enough to prefer landlines. The text showed no sender information, just digits that weren't formatted like any Louisiana number I'd seen. Against my better judgment, I pulled out the wooden box from under the register. The alligator teeth had multiplied. What started as 30 or so teeth now filled the box completely. Maybe 60 or 70 of them, ranging from tiny needles to fangs the size of my thumb. They clinked together like wind chimes when I lifted the box, and every single one was warm to the touch. How was that possible? I'd only added one tooth tonight. Another text arrived. Count them. Rule 1 specifically said, never count the teeth. I set the box down and deleted both messages. A semi-truck rumbled into the parking lot, air brakes hissing. The driver climbed down from the cab, a big guy in a Saints jersey and a trucker cap advertising Boudreau's butt paste. Normal enough, except he approached the store backward, walking heel to toe like he was afraid to turn around. He reached the door, still facing away from the building, fumbled for the handle behind his back, and entered the store in reverse. The door chime played its usual two-note song. "Evening," he said to the back wall. "Can I help you?" I asked. He shuffled backward toward the counter, never turning around. "Need some coffee and maybe a moon pie. Driving through to Galveston." I could see his face in profile. Normal guy, maybe 50, with graying stubble and tired eyes. But the way he moved, like something was standing directly in front of him that only he could see. "Coffee's fresh," I said. "Moon pies are on aisle 2. I'll just take the coffee. Don't want to turn around to get the moon pie." "Why not?" He was quiet for a moment. "You ever drive Highway 90 at night? Really look at what's on the side of the road." I hadn't. During my commute to and from work, I kept my eyes on the asphalt and tried not to think about what might be watching from the tree line. "There's things out there that ain't supposed to be," he continued, "and if you see them, they see you back. Been walking backward since mile marker 127. Whatever was following me is probably still out there." I poured his coffee and rang him up. $3 even. He paid with exact change, still facing away from the windows. "You want some advice, son? When your shift ends, drive straight home. Don't stop for nothing. Don't look in your rearview mirror, and keep your radio loud enough to drown out anything you might hear tapping on your windows." He backed out of the store the same way he'd entered, climbed into his truck in reverse, and drove away with his trailer still facing forward, but his cab somehow turned around. I watched until his taillights disappeared, then realized I'd been holding my breath. The payphone rang again at 4:47 a.m. 7 rings, just like before. Pride Station, we're closed. This time the static cleared almost immediately, and I heard a woman crying. Not the wordless singing from earlier. Actual sobbing, raw and heartbroken. "Please," she said between sobs. "I just want to go home. It's been so long." I gripped the receiver. "Who is this?" "They won't let me leave. Every night I try to walk away, but the road just leads back here, back to the water." "Where are you?" "I don't know anymore. It's dark and it smells like..." Her voice faded, replaced by that lapping water sound. Then the line went dead. I hung up, hands shaking. Mrs. Boudreaux's rules didn't say anything about talking to the voices on the phone, only what to say when answering. But something told me I'd just made a mistake. The beer cooler door swung open. This was the 4th time tonight, not the usual 3. I approached it cautiously, remembering the face I'd glimpsed earlier. The cooler interior looked normal. Beer bottles lined up in neat rows. The back wall solid metal. But the temperature had dropped noticeably. My breath came out in small puffs. I reached for the door handle and found it covered in frost. The cold burned my palm as I pulled the door shut, but not before noticing something that made my stomach lurch. Condensation on the inside of the glass had formed letters. H-E-L-P. The word faded even as I watched, melting away like ice on hot concrete. My phone buzzed again. The rules are changing. I deleted the message without reading it twice. Another vehicle pulled into the lot. An old Pontiac with Louisiana plates that looked like they'd been issued sometime during the Clinton administration. The car sat at pump 3 for several minutes, engine running before the driver got out. Woman, maybe 60, wearing a housecoat and bedroom slippers. Her hair was up in curlers, and she moved with the stiff gait of someone with arthritis. Perfectly normal, except she was bone dry despite the humidity thick enough to swim through. She entered the store and walked straight to the refrigerated section, selected a gallon of milk, and came to the counter. When she set the milk down, I noticed her hands were webbed between the fingers. "Evening, baby," she said in a thick Cajun accent. "Just the milk." I rang it up, $4.39. She reached into her purse and pulled out soaking wet dollar bills, water dripping onto the counter. Rule 4, never serve customers who are dripping wet but aren't sweating. Give them whatever they want for free. But she wasn't dripping wet. Just her money was. And she was definitely not sweating in the climate-controlled store. "No charge," I said, pushing the money back toward her. She tilted her head like a curious bird. "You sure about that, baby?" "Store policy," I lied. She smiled, and I saw that her teeth were pointed like a shark's. "Smart boy. You learning the rhythm of this place." She took the milk and walked toward the door, then paused. "That woman on the phone?" "She used to work here, long time ago. Night clerk, just like you. Pretty little thing named Amy Landry. Went missing about 3 years back." My mouth went dry. Missing? They found her car in the marsh behind the store. Never found her, though. Some say she's still out there trying to find her way home. The old woman chuckled, a sound like gravel in a blender. "Course, that's just talk. You shouldn't pay no mind to local gossip." She left, and I watched her drive away with shaking hands. At 5:23 a.m., someone tried the front door. The store was supposed to be open 24 hours, but Mrs. Boudreaux had installed an electronic lock that engaged automatically between midnight and 6 a.m. The only people who could enter during those hours were the ones who didn't need the door to be unlocked. But this person was pulling on the handle, rattling the glass. I looked up from restocking the coffee filters and saw a man in coveralls pressed against the door. He looked familiar. Same build and clothing as the customer who'd paid with the alligator tooth earlier. But this man's coveralls were pristine. No oil stains. And his skin had a healthy color. He cupped his hands around his eyes and peered through the glass, trying to see inside. When he spotted me, he waved and pointed at the door lock. "Hey!" His voice was muffled by the glass. "You're supposed to be open." I walked closer to the door, staying behind the counter. In the fluorescent lighting, I could see him clearly now. Same face as the earlier customer, but younger somehow. No tears in the cheeks, no grayish pallor. "We're open," I called back. "Door should work for customers." He tried the handle again, pulling harder. The glass rattled in its frame. "Come on, man." "I just need some gas and a beer. I got cash." He pulled out a wallet, dry leather. Not the soggy mess the other version had carried. But when he opened it, I saw it was full of alligator teeth instead of money. "I can pay," he insisted, holding up a handful of the ivory things. I backed away from the door. This wasn't right. The customer from earlier had been wet, stained, and clearly dead. This one seemed alive but couldn't enter the store. "Store's closed for cleaning," I lied. His face changed. The friendly expression melted away, replaced by something hungry and ancient. His mouth opened wider than physics should allow, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth that definitely hadn't been there moments before. "Let me in," he said, and his voice carried through the glass, despite the fact that his mouth was no longer the right shape to form words. "Let me in, and I'll show you where Amy Landry really went." He pressed both palms against the glass. Where his hands touched, the door developed spider web cracks that spread outward like frozen lightning. I grabbed Mrs. Boudreau's laminated rule sheet. Nothing about customers who couldn't enter. Nothing about the same person showing up dead and alive. The cracks in the glass reached the doorframe. One more impact, and the whole thing would shatter. The radio, which had been quietly playing Zydeco music, suddenly switched to static. Through the white noise, I heard Amy Landry's voice again, clearer this time. "Don't let him in, please. He's the reason I can't go home." The thing outside slammed its fist against the cracking glass. Each impact sent new fractures spiraling across the door, and I could hear the safety glass beginning to buckle. "Jake," Amy's voice crackled through the radio static. "You have to get to the circuit breaker, kill the lights." "What?" I whispered, not sure if she could hear me. "The lights anchor in. Turn them off and he can't maintain form here." The creature outside had given up any pretense of humanity. Its face stretched like taffy, features sliding around like they'd been drawn in wet clay. But those coveralls remained pristine, and the wallet full of teeth gleamed in its grip. I ran toward the back of the store where Mrs. Boudreau had shown me the electrical panel. Behind me, I heard glass beginning to give way, not breaking, but groaning under pressure. The breaker box sat mounted next to the employee bathroom, the same door I'd been hearing scratches from all night. As I reached for the main power switch, something inside the bathroom started laughing. High-pitched giggles, like a child playing hide-and-seek. I hesitated. Killing the lights would plunge the store into darkness. Whatever was in that bathroom might decide to come out and play. Another crash from the front door. This time I heard glass actually shatter. I flipped the main breaker. The store plunged into blackness so complete, it felt solid. The humming of the beer cooler died. The radio cut to silence, and even the red glow of the emergency exit sign vanished. But outside, the parking lot lights remained on, casting faint yellow rectangles through the windows. The giggling from the bathroom stopped. Footsteps crunched across broken glass near the front of the store. Slow, careful steps, like someone testing unfamiliar ground. "Where are you, Jake?" The voice belonged to the creature, but it sounded different now. Multiple tones layered on top of each other, like several people speaking in unison. "I just want to talk." I pressed myself against the wall next to the electrical panel, trying to control my breathing. In the darkness, every small sound amplified. The settling of the building, the distant hum of the parking lot lights, something dripping. "Amy used to hide back there too." The voice continued, closer now. "Right where you are. She thought turning off the lights would save her." The dripping sound grew louder. In the faint light filtering from outside, I could see dark liquid pooling on the floor near my feet. It smelled like the Atchafalaya River at low tide, mud and decay, and things that should stay buried. "You know what I am, Jake?" "I'm what happens when someone breaks the rules." Amy got curious about the box of teeth, started counting them, cataloging them, trying to figure out what they meant. The voice was almost conversational now, like we were old friends catching up. She thought she was smart, keeping a notebook, tracking patterns. The liquid was rising, covering my shoes now. Whatever was dripping from above, there was a lot of it. But the teeth aren't just payment, you see. They're anchors. Each one belongs to someone who made a deal, someone who needed something from the marsh and was willing to pay the price. I felt around the wall until I found the bathroom door handle. If I could get inside and lock it, maybe buy myself some time. But Rule 5 said never to open that door, even for management, even to save your own life. The liquid reached my ankles. It was warm and had the consistency of motor oil mixed with swamp water. In the darkness, I couldn't tell what color it was, but the smell was getting worse. "Amy's tooth is in that box now," the voice said. It sounded like it was right next to me, but I couldn't see anything. "Prettiest one in there, sharp as heartbreak and twice as white. Want to see it?" Light flared suddenly. Not electric light, but something organic and pulsing. The creature stood 5 feet away, and it was holding something that glowed with bioluminescent foxfire. An alligator tooth the size of a dagger, emanating cold blue light. In that glow, I could see what was dripping from the ceiling. Spanish moss, but not the gray-green variety that draped the trees outside. This moss was black and wet, hanging in thick curtains that hadn't been there when the lights were on. Water, if it was water, streamed from each strand, and the smell of decay was overwhelming. The creature itself had stabilized into something resembling human shape, but wrong in every detail. Too tall, too thin, with joints that bent the wrong way. Its face was a composite of features I'd seen throughout the night. The gray skin of the first customer, the pointed teeth of the old woman, the fish-hook tears I'd noticed earlier. "She tried to use the bathroom to hide," it said, gesturing at the door behind me with one impossibly long finger. "But that's where we keep the hungry ones, the mistakes, the people who learned too much and had to be recycled." From inside the bathroom came answering scratches, as if whatever was in there recognized the creature's voice. "You could join them," it continued. "Or you could be smart like the other clerks. Follow the rules, don't ask questions, and go home every morning with your $15 an hour." The glowing tooth pulsed brighter. In its light, I could see my reflection in the creature's eyes, but my reflection was wrong too. In the thing's gaze, I looked older, grayer, with the same 1,000-yard stare I'd seen on Cody Bedreau earlier. "What do you want?" I managed to ask. Same thing everyone wants, to go home. The creature tilted its head. "Problem is, home doesn't exist anymore, hasn't for a long time, so we make do with what we can find." It stepped closer, and the water around my feet began to bubble. You know what Amy's mistake was? She thought the rules were there to protect the customers from you. But it's the opposite, isn't it? The scratching from the bathroom grew frantic. Multiple hands, or things that might have been hands, clawing at the inside of the door. The rules protect you from us, and us from what's in there. The creature pointed at the bathroom door. Everything that's left of the people who couldn't follow 7 simple instructions. I thought about Mrs. Boudreau's training, her matter-of-fact delivery of the rules, the way she'd shrugged when I asked what happened to people who didn't follow them. How many clerks had worked here before me? How many had ended up scratching at that bathroom door? So what happens now? I asked. The creature smiled, and in that expression I saw something almost human. Now you choose. You can open that door and join your predecessors, or you can accept that some jobs come with conditions you didn't read in the fine print. The glowing tooth pulsed once more, then went dark. In the sudden blackness, I heard the creature's voice one last time. Either way, the lights stay off until dawn. House rules. Footsteps moved away from me, crunching through broken glass toward the front of the store. The dripping from the ceiling slowed, then stopped. The scratching from the bathroom faded to whispers. I stood in the dark, water still lapping at my ankles, and thought about Amy Landry. How she'd tried to understand what she was dealing with instead of just accepting it. How her curiosity had gotten her killed, or worse, transformed into something that haunted payphones and begged to go home. My phone buzzed. In the darkness, the screen was blindingly bright. Another message from the unknown number. 4 hours until sunrise. Stay away from the bathroom door. I deleted the message and checked the time. 2:13 a.m. 4 hours had never seemed so long. Something moved in the darkness near the front of the store. Not the creature, something smaller. Footsteps, but lighter than before. Then I heard a woman's voice, clear and close. Jake? It's okay now. He's gone. Amy Landry stepped into the faint light filtering through the broken door. She looked exactly like I'd imagined, mid-20s, brown hair, wearing a Pride gas station uniform shirt. She seemed solid, real, until I noticed she was completely dry, despite standing in the flooded store. Thank you, she said, for not letting him in. Are you really Amy? She nodded. What's left of me? I've been trying to warn people, but the phone only works certain times. How do I get out of this? Her expression grew sad. You don't, but you can survive it. Follow the rules, Jake. All of them, exactly as written. Don't get curious like I did. She began to fade, becoming translucent in the dim light. And whatever you do, she whispered as she disappeared, don't open that bathroom door. Amy's warning echoed in my mind as I stood in the flooded store, surrounded by darkness that felt alive. The water around my ankles had stopped rising, but it remained warm and thick, making each step feel like walking through molasses. I made my way toward the front of the store, using my phone's flashlight to navigate around the displays. The broken glass crunched under my feet, and cool air drifted through the shattered door. Outside, the parking lot lights cast everything in sickly yellow, making the Spanish moss hanging from the trees look like funeral shrouds. The radio crackled to life despite having no power. Traffic report, folks. Highway 90 eastbound is experiencing some unusual delays tonight. Motorists report vehicles stalled near mile marker 127, and there are unconfirmed sightings of... The transmission cut to static, then resumed with a different voice. Jake Thibodeau, this is dispatch. We've got reports of disturbances at your location. What's your status? I'd never heard of any dispatch service for the gas station. Mrs. Bedreau had made it clear that if anything happened, I was on my own until morning. "Jake, please respond. We're showing multiple emergency signals from your area." The radio fell silent. I didn't answer, remembering Amy's advice about not getting curious. Whatever was speaking through that radio wasn't trying to help me. A new customer pulled into the lot. The vehicle was unlike anything I'd seen. A boat on wheels, essentially. An old airboat with its massive fan mounted on the back, but somehow equipped with automobile tires. It moved silently across the parking lot, leaving no tire tracks on the wet asphalt. The driver climbed out, and I recognized him immediately. Beau. My dead brother walked toward the broken door, moving with the easy confidence I remembered from our childhood. Same Saints cap, same oil-stained work shirt, same crooked smile that had gotten us both out of trouble more times than I could count. "Hey, little brother," he called out. "Looks like you're having a rough night." Every instinct told me this was a trap, but seeing Beau, really seeing him, not just hearing his voice through a bathroom door, made my chest tighten with grief I thought I'd finished processing. "You're not real," I said. He stopped just outside the broken door, hands in his pockets. "Real as anything else around here. You think this place operates by normal rules?" He looked exactly as I remembered, down to the scar on his left hand from a fishing accident when he was 12. But his clothes were dry, and there was something off about his shadow. It fell in the wrong direction, pointing toward the light instead of away from it. "Come outside, Jake. Let's talk proper, like we used to on the dock behind Mama's house." The memory was accurate. After our father left, Beau and I would sit on the old fishing dock behind our mother's trailer, talking about everything and nothing. He'd been more of a father to me than our actual dad ever was. "I can't leave the store," I said. "Why not?" "Place is already trashed. Lights are out. Whoever's paying you $15 an hour to babysit this mess ain't gonna fire you for stepping outside." He was right about the mess. The store looked like a hurricane had hit it. Broken glass, standing water, that black moss still hanging from the ceiling in thick curtains. But something about the way he spoke bothered me. Beau had never called work a mess, even when complaining about the worst jobs on the oil rigs. "What happened to you out there?" I asked, pointing toward the water behind the store. His expression changed, becoming guarded. "Accident. Rig blew up. You know that. I mean after. Where have you been?" He gestured vaguely toward the marsh. "Around. You'd be surprised how much company there is out here. Amy Landry, Tommy Prejean, that truck driver who went missing last spring. We all found each other eventually. Tommy Prejean, the clerk who'd worked here before they installed bulletproof glass. The one the woman with no reflection had asked about. They're all dead, Beau. So am I. Doesn't mean we can't talk." He stepped closer to the broken door, and I noticed his boots weren't making any sound on the glass. "Come on, Jake. Just for a few minutes. I got things to tell you about this place." Through the radio static, Amy's voice whispered, "Don't go outside. That's not your brother." But it looked like Beau. Sounded like him. Even had the same habit of tapping his fingers against his leg when he was nervous. "How do I know you're really him?" I asked. Beau smiled. "Remember when you were 8 and fell through the ice on Kestrel Lake? I pulled you out. But you were blue as a cornflower. Mama wanted to take you to the hospital, but I wrapped you in blankets and sat with you by the wood stove until you warmed up. You made me promise not to tell anyone you'd been trying to walk on water like Jesus." The memory hit me like a physical blow. Nobody else knew that story. Beau had kept that promise for 23 years, never even mentioning it when our mother worried about me being reckless. Bo? My voice cracked like I was 8 years old again. Yeah, little brother. It's me. He extended his hand toward the broken door. Come on. There's things you need to understand about what you've gotten yourself into. I took a step toward the door, then stopped. Something Amy had said earlier nagged at me. Your brother's at peace. If you're really Bo, I said, tell me what you were working on when the rig exploded. His hand dropped. Platform maintenance. You know that. No, specifically. What were you fixing? A long pause. In the parking lot lights, I could see his face clearly. Every detail perfect except for his eyes. They were the wrong color. Bo's eyes had been brown like mine. This thing's eyes were black. Doesn't matter what I was fixing, he said, and his voice carried a sharp edge I'd never heard from my brother. What matters is, I'm here now, and I can help you get out of this mess. Amy said you were at peace. Amy's been dead 3 years. What does she know about peace? The thing wearing Bo's face stepped closer to the threshold. I'm offering you a way out, Jake. You can come with me, or you can stay here and end up like Tommy Prejean. What happened to Tommy? Same thing that'll happen to you if you keep asking questions. Its smile was no longer Bo's. Too wide, too many teeth. He got curious about the rules, started breaking them on purpose, testing the boundaries. You want to know where that leads? The scratching from the bathroom door resumed, frantic and desperate. Tommy's been trying to get out of that bathroom for 6 months now, the false Bo continued. Along with every other clerk who thought they were smarter than the people who wrote those rules. My phone buzzed. Text message. He's lying. Tommy left town. Check the employee records. I glanced at the phone, and when I looked up, the thing pretending to be my brother had moved closer. Its shadow now fell correctly, pointing away from the light, but that somehow made it worse. Who's texting you, Jake? Wrong number. Show me. I held up the phone, displaying the lock screen. No messages visible. But I could have sworn I'd just read something about employee records. Smart boy. You're learning. It studied me with those wrong-colored eyes. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to finish your shift, go home, and come back tomorrow night. And the night after that. And the night after that. Because this job doesn't let people quit. What do you mean? Check your contract, real carefully. The part about termination of employment. Its grin widened impossibly. Mrs. Boudreau is older than she looks, Jake. A lot older. And this place has been operating under the same management for longer than you believe. The radio crackled again. Jake, this is Amy. Don't listen to him. There is a way out, but... The transmission cut to screaming. Not Amy's voice, but multiple voices all screaming at once. Then silence. The false Bo laughed. Poor Amy, still trying to play hero from beyond the grave. You know what her real mistake was? She thought she could save the next person to work here. Kept leaving notes, trying to warn people. But some jobs you can't be saved from. How many people have worked here? Since I've been paying attention, maybe 24 night clerks over the past 15 years. Most last about 6 months before they either break down or break the rules. The smart ones learn to adapt. It gestured toward the broken door. Last chance, little brother. Come outside and I'll show you the truth about this place. Or stay inside and spend the next 40 years serving alligator teeth to dead customers. Behind me, something new started scratching at the bathroom door. Different rhythm, more organized, like Morse code. What's that? I asked. Tommy trying to communicate. He does that sometimes when there's a new clerk. Thinks he can warn them. The thing shrugged with Bo's shoulders. Of course, nobody's learned Morse code in about 30 years, so it's pretty useless. I listened to the scratching pattern. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. Even I knew that one. SOS. You're lying about Tommy, I said. Am I? It tilted its head. Check the employee records then. Mrs. Boudreau keeps them in the office. There was no office. The store was just the main room, a bathroom, and a storage closet. But as the thing said it, I noticed a door I'd never seen before. Located between the beer cooler and the motor oil display, painted the same color as the walls. Easy to miss unless you were looking for it. Go ahead, the false beau encouraged. Take a look at the personnel files. See how many Jake Thibodeaux have worked here before you. My phone buzzed again. This time the message was clear. Don't go in that office. Whatever you see in there, it's not real. The thing pretending to be my brother noticed me reading. Someone's working real hard to keep you in the dark, little brother. Makes you wonder what they're hiding. It was right. Ever since the lights went out, someone or something had been sending me warnings, trying to guide my actions. But who? And why should I trust them any more than this creature? Time's running short, the false beau said. Sun comes up in a few hours, and then you'll be stuck here another night. But if you come with me now, I can show you the way home. The real way, not the road that just leads back here. The office door stood slightly ajar, darkness visible beyond it. The scratching from the bathroom had evolved into what definitely sounded like Morse code. Dot dash dot dot dash dot. The letter R, repeated over and over. Run, run, run. But where could I run to in a store with broken doors and no lights, surrounded by marsh and things that used to be human? The false beau extended his hand again. What's it going to be, Jake? I turned away from the false beau and walked toward the office door. Wrong choice, little brother, it called after me. The disappointment in its voice sounded genuine, which made it worse somehow. That door only leads to heartbreak. The office door's handle was warm under my palm, like someone had been gripping it moments before. I pushed it open and stepped into a space that shouldn't exist. The office was huge, far larger than the gas station itself. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a harsh white light that hurt my eyes after hours in darkness. File cabinets lined the walls, stretching up to a ceiling I couldn't see. Industrial carpeting the color of dried blood covered the floor, and the air smelled like old paper and something else. Something organic and rotten. A metal desk sat in the center of the room, covered with manila folders and a desktop computer that looked like it belonged in 1985. The monitor displayed a screensaver, swimming fish that never seemed to reach the edges of the screen. I approached the desk cautiously. The folders were labeled with names, dates going back decades. I flipped through them. Marcus Chin, 1987 to 1988. Rodriguez Williams, 1992 to 1993. Sarah Mitchell, 1998 to 1999. Each folder contained employment records, timesheets, and at the bottom, a single photograph. The photos showed the same thing. A person standing behind the Pride gas station counter, smiling at the camera. But in each picture, the person's reflection was missing from the security monitor, visible in the background. Just like the woman with no reflection I'd served earlier. My hands shook as I found a folder labeled Jake Thibodeaux, 2024 to unknown. Inside were copies of forms I'd never filled out, tax documents I'd never signed, and at the bottom, a photograph of me standing behind the counter. In the picture, I was smiling, but my eyes looked hollow, exhausted. And like all the others, no reflection appeared in the security monitor. When had this photo been taken? I'd never posed for any company pictures. The computer monitor chimed. The fish screensaver dissolved, replaced by a message in green text. Employee status. Active years of service, 0.3. Classification, transitional notes, subject shows, resistance to integration, recommend accelerated conditioning. I clicked through menus, finding records for every employee since 1972. Most lasted 6 months to 2 years before their status changed to integrated or transferred to auxiliary duties. A few were marked terminated unauthorized departure. Tommy Prejean's file was still active. Status: Containment Unit 1, Bathroom Storage. The scratching from the bathroom wasn't just Tommy trying to communicate. He was literally trapped in there, along with God knew how many other former employees. A new file appeared on the screen. Amy Landry, 2021 to 2024. Status: Communications Relay. Amy wasn't just a ghost trying to help. She was being used by whatever ran this place to communicate with new employees, to guide them through the breaking-in process. My phone buzzed. Another message. Get out of the office. Now, this time I recognized the writing style. Short, urgent, like the way Amy spoke. But if Amy was being controlled by the gas station systems, could I trust her warnings? Footsteps echoed from outside the office. The false beau had entered the store. "Jake, where'd you go, little brother?" I looked around for another exit. The office had no windows, just walls lined with file cabinets that seemed to stretch infinitely upward. But at the far end of the room, I spotted another door marked Archive Storage. "Found the office, did you?" Beau's voice was closer now. "Bet you're learning all sorts of interesting things about your new career." I grabbed my employment file and headed for the archive door. Behind me, I heard the false beau enter the office, his footsteps muffled by the carpet. "Employee files make for fascinating reading," he called out, especially the section about retirement benefits. The archive door opened into a narrow hallway, lined with metal shelving. Instead of files, the shelves held glass jars filled with murky liquid. Floating in each jar was an alligator tooth, and attached to each jar was a small placard with a name and date. Amy Landry, March 15th, 2024. Tommy Prejean, September 3rd, 2023. Marcus Chen, October 12th, 1988. Hundreds of jars, each containing a tooth and a name. At the end of the hallway, I found an empty jar with my name already printed on the placard. Jake Thibodeau, December 2024. "Retirement benefits," I whispered, understanding finally washing over me. The alligator teeth weren't payment from customers. They were trophies, each one harvested from an employee who'd outlived their usefulness. My phone buzzed. The real Amy is in jar 127. I'm just an echo. I turned around and found the false beau standing at the entrance to the archive. Clever boy. Most people take months to piece it together. "What is this place?" "Employment agency. We provide workers for a very specialized type of business." It walked down the hallway, running its fingers along the jars. "Some jobs require people who understand discretion, who won't ask questions when unusual customers come through the door. And when we figure it out, then you become part of the customer base." It stopped next to my empty jar. "Don't worry, it's not painful. Most employees find the transition quite peaceful." From somewhere in the walls, I heard Tommy's Morse code. Dot dash dot dash dot dash dot dash. The letter C repeated over and over. "What's he trying to say?" "Contract," the false beau said casually. Tommy's been trying to tell people to read their employment contracts more carefully, but most folks don't bother with the fine print until it's too late. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo I'd taken of my contract when Mrs. Boudreau hired me. Most of it was standard employment language, but buried in paragraph 17 was a clause I'd skimmed over. "Employee agrees that termination of employment may only occur through mutual consent of both parties, or upon completion of sole bond transfer ceremony as outlined in Company Policy Manual Section 12. Sole bond transfer ceremony, I read aloud. That's when we harvest your tooth, it explained cheerfully. Very quick process, you won't feel a thing. And if I refuse? Then you become auxiliary staff, like Tommy and the others in the bathroom. They help maintain the facility, keep the new employees in line. It gestured toward the scratching sounds coming from the walls. It's not a bad life. Quiet, predictable, and you get to meet all the new hires. My phone buzzed again. Dawn in 90 minutes. Get to the register. Why the register? The false beau's expression changed, becoming wary. Who's texting you, Jake? Instead of answering, I pushed past it and ran back through the office. It didn't try to stop me, which worried me more than if it had given chase. I burst through the office door back into the main store. The darkness felt welcoming after the harsh fluorescent lights. Outside, the sky had lightened slightly. Not dawn yet, but getting closer. The register sat behind its bulletproof glass, exactly where I'd left it. But now the glass was spiderwebbed with cracks from the creature's earlier assault. One good hit would shatter it completely. I climbed behind the counter and pulled out the wooden box of alligator teeth. In the faint light from outside, they gleamed like pearls. If each tooth represented a former employee, there were enough here to account for decades of workers. My phone lit up with a longer message. The box is the anchor point. Everything supernatural here is tied to those teeth. If you can destroy the box, you break the cycle. Amy? Not Amy. Someone who got away. Someone who figured out the pattern before they could harvest his tooth. Who? Beau. Your real brother. He's been trying to reach you since you started working here. I stared at the phone screen, hope and disbelief warring in my chest. Could Beau really be alive? Or was this just another trick? The explosion on the rig wasn't an accident. I found out what the company was really doing. They weren't drilling for oil. They were drilling into something else. Something that's been sleeping under the bayou for a long time. Outside, the false Beau appeared at the broken door. But it no longer wore my brother's face. Instead, it had become something else entirely. Tall and skeletal, with too many joints and skin like wet leather. "Time's up, Jake," it said in a voice like grinding metal. "Dawn's coming, and we need to finish this." Behind me, the bathroom door started shaking violently. Whatever was inside was getting agitated as sunrise approached. "You have to choose," my phone displayed. "Destroy the box and free everyone, or become part of the collection." The creature stepped through the broken door, moving with predatory grace. In its hand, it held a pair of pliers stained with old blood. "This won't hurt much," it said. "We've had lots of practice." The creature stepped closer, pliers gleaming in the parking lot lights. Up close, I could see it wasn't one entity but several, their forms layered like double-exposed photographs. Faces flickered in and out of focus. Mrs. Boudreaux, the woman with webbed fingers, customers I'd served throughout the night. "We tried to do this the easy way," it said in a voice that harmonized with itself. "Most employees cooperate by now. But you Thibodeau boys always were stubborn." I clutched the wooden box against my chest. The teeth inside rattled like dice, and each one pulsed with warmth. Through the wood, I could feel individual heartbeats. Dozens of them, all slightly out of sync. "These aren't just teeth," I said. "They're still alive." Alive is a strong word. Aware might be more accurate. The creature tilted its head, and I heard vertebrae crack. Each tooth maintains a connection to its original owner. That's how we keep them compliant. My phone vibrated. The bayou behind the store. There's a deep channel about 50 yards out. Salt water from the Gulf, if you can get the box there. Bo? Yeah, little brother. I'm here. The creature lunged forward, pliers snapping at my face. I dove behind the register as the remaining bulletproof glass shattered completely. Safety glass rained down like crystal snow, and I felt pieces cut through my shirt. You can't hide forever, Jake. This building has been consecrated for our purposes. Every inch of it belongs to us. I looked around desperately. The beer cooler, the bathroom door, the office entrance. Every potential escape route led deeper into the station's supernatural territory. But the broken front door led outside, to the parking lot, to the marsh beyond. Run for the water, Bo texted. I'll try to buy you time. How? The radio crackled to life with a sound I'd never expected to hear again. Bo's laugh. Not the distorted echo I'd heard through the bathroom door, but the genuine article, warm and defiant and completely human. Hey, ugly! Bo's voice boomed from the speakers. Remember me? The one who got away? The creature spun toward the radio, momentarily distracted. Impossible. We severed your connection to this realm. Did a pretty poor job of it, didn't you? Bo's voice carried that cocky tone I remembered from when we were kids, the one that meant he was about to do something dangerous and stupid. Want to know what I learned when I escaped your little collection? This whole operation runs on a house of cards. I took advantage of the creature's distraction to edge toward the broken door. The wooden box felt heavier with each step, like it was trying to anchor itself to the building. You need the teeth to maintain the anchors, Bo continued. But the anchors need the building to focus the energy. Break one part of the triangle, and the whole thing collapses. The creature's form began to solidify, pulling its scattered aspects into a more coherent shape. Whatever it was becoming, I didn't want to see the finished product. The building has stood for 40 years, it said. It won't fall tonight. Maybe not. But Jake's about to destroy your tooth collection, and without those anchors, you're just another swamp ghost with delusions of grandeur. I reached the threshold of the broken door. The parking lot stretched ahead of me, and beyond that, the dark line of trees marking the edge of the bayou. 50 yards to salt water. I could make that distance if I ran hard enough. The creature turned back to me just as I bolted. Stop him! The bathroom door exploded outward. Tommy Prejean stumbled into the main store, followed by a dozen other figures in various states of decay. Former employees, all of them, their eyes reflecting light like nocturnal animals. They moved with mechanical precision, forming a line between me and the exit. I ducked under Tommy's grasping hands and made it outside. Behind me, the creature shrieked in frustration. The parking lot asphalt was slick with dew, and my shoes struggled for grip as I sprinted toward the tree line. The box of teeth seemed to fight me every step, pulling backward like a magnet drawn to metal. 20 yards from the store, I heard footsteps behind me. Not the shuffling gait of the reanimated employees, but something faster. The creature had abandoned its attempts at human disguise and was pursuing me on all fours, moving like a spider the size of a person. 15 yards to the trees, 10. I crashed through the underbrush, cypress branches whipping across my face. Behind me, the creature gained ground, its breathing wet and ragged, but ahead I could smell it. Salt and mud and the clean scent of moving water. The bayou. I burst through the last line of trees and found myself on a narrow sandy beach. The water stretched out black and mirror smooth, reflecting the first hint of dawn on the eastern horizon. 50 yards out, just like Bo had said, I could see the telltale ripples of a deep channel. My phone lit up. Throw it as far as you can. The salt water will break the connections. The creature crashed through the trees behind me. no longer bothering with any pretense of humanity. In the growing light, I could see it clearly. A writhing mass of limbs and faces, held together by what looked like Spanish moss and pure malevolence. I drew back my arm and hurled the wooden box toward the deep channel. It arced through the air, tumbling end over end. For a moment, it seemed to hang suspended against the brightening sky. Then it hit the water with a splash that seemed far too loud for such a small object. The effect was instantaneous. The creature behind me screamed, not one voice, but dozens, all the stolen souls crying out at once. Across the water, I saw lights beginning to rise from the depths. Pinpricks of bioluminescence that resolved into human shapes, translucent figures walking across the surface of the bayou. Amy Landry was among them, looking younger and more at peace than I'd ever seen her. She waved at me before dissolving into mist. Tommy Prejean emerged from the trees behind me, but now he was solid and real, his eyes clear and grateful. "Thank you," he said simply, then followed Amy into the morning light. One by one, dozens of figures rose from the bayou and walked away, former employees finally free to go home. The creature was coming apart. The stolen faces that made up its form were pulling away, returning to their rightful owners. What remained was something ancient and angry, but ultimately powerless, without its collection of anchors. "This isn't over," it hissed as its form continued to dissolve. "There are other stations, other collections. The company has been patient for..." It was cut off as a new figure emerged from the water. Bo walked across the surface of the bayou like it was solid ground, his form gaining substance with each step. When he reached the shore, he looked exactly like he had in life, except for his eyes. They held a depth of knowledge that spoke of experiences beyond death. "Yeah, about the company," he said to the fading creature. "Jake's not the only one who's been busy tonight. While you were playing games with my brother, I've been visiting your other locations. Turns out, saltwater works real well on all kinds of supernatural anchors." The creature made one last desperate lunge at me, but its form had become too insubstantial. It passed through me like cold smoke, then dissipated entirely as the sun crested the horizon. Bo walked over and put his hand on my shoulder. I could feel the contact, solid and warm and real. "Hey, little brother. Are you really here? For now. The rules are different when the anchors are broken. I can stick around long enough to make sure you're okay." I looked back toward the gas station. The building was still standing, but something fundamental had changed. The oppressive atmosphere was gone, replaced by the normal humidity and insect buzz of a Louisiana morning. What happens now? Now you go home, get some sleep, and tomorrow you find a different job. Bo grinned. Maybe something with regular hours and fewer supernatural hazards. What about Mrs. Boudreau? She was just another employee, caught in the same trap as everyone else. With the anchors destroyed, she'll probably wake up tomorrow, wondering why she's been managing a gas station for 40 years. We walked back through the trees together. In the growing daylight, the Pride gas station looked mundane and tired, just another rural business struggling to stay afloat. My truck sat where I'd left it, keys still in the ignition. "Will I see you again?" I asked. Bo was already beginning to fade as the sun climbed higher. "I've got other places to be, Jake. Other people who need help. But I'll be around if you need me." He paused, his form becoming translucent in the morning light. "And Jake? Next time someone offers you a job that seems too good to be true, yeah? Ask to see the employee handbook first." He vanished with a laugh that echoed across the water, leaving me alone in the parking lot of an empty gas station as a new day began. I never went back to collect my final paycheck. The morning after my last shift, I drove straight to New Orleans and found a job washing dishes at a Creole restaurant in the French Quarter. The pay was worse, the hours were longer, and my hands stayed permanently wrinkled from hot dishwater. But when the cook started screaming about missing ingredients, I knew it was just stress, not supernatural intervention. When customers paid with cash, it was always actual money, never body parts from apex predators. The simple reliability of normal problems felt like a gift. Mrs. Boudreau called my phone exactly once. I let it go to voicemail and listened to her message later. "Jake, honey, I don't know what happened at the store, but everything's different now. The night shift position is still open if you want to come back. It's just a regular gas station job now. No more." A long pause. No more strangeness. I deleted the message and changed my number the next day. Working in the restaurant kitchen taught me that Louisiana has its own rhythms: hurricanes and Mardi Gras, crawfish season and football, the eternal cycle of tourists who think they understand the culture because they've tried beignets. I learned to make roux without burning it, picked up enough French to understand when the servers complained about difficult customers, and discovered that even in a city famous for supernatural tours and ghost stories, most people just wanted good food and cold beer. The nightmares stopped after about 6 weeks. I'd been dreaming of alligator teeth growing in my mouth, of Spanish moss that strangled instead of decorated, of radios playing the same song until the words lost all meaning. But gradually, my sleep became peaceful again. I started dating a server named Claire, who laughed at my stories about Minnesota winters and didn't ask too many questions about why I'd moved to Louisiana. I never told her about Pride gas station. What would be the point? She'd either think I was crazy or she'd believe me, and I wasn't sure which outcome scared me more. The closest I came to talking about it was during Hurricane Ida, when we lost power for 3 days and had to use candles for light. Claire complained about how creepy the shadows looked dancing on the walls, and I almost said something about real darkness, about the kind of shadows that moved independently of their light sources. Instead, I just held her closer and promised the electricity would come back soon. Some experiences change you in ways that can't be explained to people who weren't there. I kept my phone from that night, though I replaced everything else. Sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep, I'd scroll through the message history. All the texts from Beau were gone, as if they'd never existed, but I knew they'd been real. The gaps in my memory had the shape of his words, and that was enough. 6 months after leaving Pride, I drove past the station on my way to visit Claire's family in Houma. The building was still there, but it had been converted into a bait shop. A hand-painted sign advertised live shrimp and cold beer, and the parking lot was full of pickup trucks with boat trailers. Through the windows, I could see normal fluorescent lighting and displays of fishing tackle. Mrs. Boudreau stood behind the counter, ringing up a customer's purchase of ice and crickets. She looked younger somehow, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. When she smiled at the customer, it reached her eyes in a way I'd never seen during my employment. I didn't stop. That evening, Claire asked me why I'd been so quiet during dinner with her family. I told her I'd seen an old workplace and it brought back some memories. She squeezed my hand and said she understood about jobs you'd rather forget. She was right, of course, but some jobs don't just get forgotten. Some jobs teach you that the world is stranger and more dangerous than you ever imagined, and that knowledge becomes part of who you are forever. I'm okay with that now.